Welcome to Champion Minded, the podcast for those who aim for excellence, not only in the sports arena, but in life. My name is Allistair, author, speaker, mindset and performance coach, and my goal is to help you unleash your unlimited potential and provide you with the tools to achieve greatness. Are you ready to become champion minded? Then let's do this. Hey everybody, good to be with you again. This is Allistair McCaw, and thank you for tuning in to the Champion Minded podcast. In today's episode of What It Takes, we have Dr. Fergus Connolly, someone that I've really admired in the industry. He is one of the world's foremost human performance thought leaders and influencers, and has applied science with leading sports, military, and business teams. He is the only coach to have full-time roles in every major sport, including soccer. He's done some work with Liverpool, Bolton Wanderers, professional and college football, the San Francisco 49ers, and University of Michigan, and of course, Welsh rugby. A wealth of information, a wealth of experience, someone that I really enjoy following on social media as well. He's got 3 books out, 3 or 4 books out, if I'm not misunderstood. What we discussed today on the podcast was some of the advice on being productive during the coronavirus, because it is the beginning of April 2020 and we're experiencing the coronavirus. His experiences in the industry of working with top performers and teams, how he got into the industry. We also talk about influences in his career. He's also done a fantastic TED Talk that you've got to check out. And he shares some great advice for younger coaches out there. I really enjoyed this chat with Fergus. He's based in San Francisco, and I'm sure you guys will as well. As always, please leave a review on iTunes or on YouTube and share this episode if you enjoy it. So here it is, guys. Enjoy this. This is Fergus Connolly. Fergus Connolly, welcome to the Champion Minded podcast.
Allistair, thanks for having me. Delighted to be with you. Now, we've been talking about doing this for a while.
Yeah, I know, and now we have a chance, right? With the situation, the current situation, the Corona situation.
Exactly. Yes.
You know, it's given me a chance to catch up with some stuff as well. But you know, I pretty much caught up with all that stuff in the first week, and it's almost like, okay, this could go on for another, who knows, 9 weeks, 10 weeks. So. Just as we were just speaking off air there, you just got to keep yourself busy, right?
Yeah, I think that's critical. And, you know, I think that's one of the key pieces of advice in, you know, for anybody is you don't know how long this is going to go on. So you have to stay busy. You have to really be, you know, disciplined. Organize your day, and it's going to be a good challenge for people, and it's going to be a shock for a lot of people as well, because you know they're spending time around maybe the same people all of the time, and then others are just spending a lot of time, you know, on like, you know, Zoom calls and whatever. So it's going to change things for a lot of people in the short term.
Yeah. Now, I'd like to get into that a little bit further in the conversation, especially with the current situation and you know, what negatives and what positives you see coming out of this. And obviously, if you'd have some tips on staying productive during this time, because I know there's a lot of people that are obviously being laid off work and even some that have been made redundant, which is pretty sad. I mean, it's a crazy time. But let's go back. Fergus, give us a little bit about your background, where you were born, where you grew up, how you got into what you do today?
Well, as we found out, actually, we grew up not too far apart. I grew up in Ireland along the border, and between Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland in the 80s. I thought that I had planned just to become a teacher. My father was a teacher, and that's what I thought I'd do. Went to university in Limerick in Ireland. Stayed on, did a master's, did a PhD, but I was always interested in sport, and I would save whatever little bit of money I had. I used to have a brown envelope, actually. That's what I used to save my money in that. I remember, like, a large brown manila envelope. And when I had enough money together, I would I had a passport, and I was just like a lot of Irish people, happy to fly, happy to travel, and I would go and visit people, and that's what it was a passion. It's still a passion. I on one trip was offered a job with Bolton Wanderers soccer team, and you know, I jumped at that. I took a career break. After that, then I was offered a job with the Welsh rugby team. Then I consulted for a few teams. Ended up then, around the world actually, some in the States, and ended up getting offered a job with the University of Michigan. Worked there, and then when Jim Harbaugh went to Michigan, I went with him to Michigan, and I've been fortunate to work across most team sports. I've not really worked with individual sports. I wouldn't have the same experience that you would have, with individuals. Trained one or two boxers, but that's really it. Mostly in team sports, and that's been my experience, or I'm not the word expertise, I guess you can use loosely. Really problem solving, sports science, strength and conditioning, performance, managing all of those things, and just I'm 42 now. 20 odd years ago, I just started on a journey of just trying to understand what does it take to make a team win, and still haven't figured out the answer as for this. But truthfully, like things keep changing, and you keep learning more things, and you realize some things are really important. Then you realize some other things aren't.
So I'm not alone. I'm not alone on those thoughts.
No, man, no. And I think, and you smile. Some people think, they've got all the answers and it's a formula, and we don't. We're trying to solve it, and you're trying to, be a little bit ahead of what's happening, and you're just in all honesty, you're trying to provide the best to performers that you can at that point in time.
Yeah. Now, we're both in the same type of field. I mean, we were joking about this on a call probably about 2 months ago, where I was trying to figure out the exact what our title would be. You know what I mean? It's like a little bit of it's mindset, it's performance, it's leadership, it's all those things all rolled into one. But would you agree with me that we have like type of carved out a niche in this field? I mean, there's not a lot of us. But with consulting at this high level, because this is still, in my opinion, a very, very new role. If you were to suggest back when you were in school that you were going to do what you do today, they would have laughed at you and said, "Well, there's no career like that. There's no place for that." You know what I mean? That I even remember being in high school, and this was back in the late '80s. And saying, a teacher said to me, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to work in the sports industry." And she type of like laughed as if to say, "Well, I mean, sports isn't a business." And it wasn't back there, so to say. I mean, with regards, I believe the professionalism has come obviously from social media and all these things as well. Would you agree with that?
Oh, without a doubt. That's why I went and became a teacher. I thought, particularly in Ireland, sport is part of society. It's a subset of society. It's not even an entity in itself. The role of sport is to, and I still believe this, to teach young people lessons for life. And if you're privileged to get the opportunity to earn a living in it, well, you're incredibly lucky. And I never planned on doing it. I never planned on working in it full time. To me, it was a hobby, a passion that I truly enjoyed, and I've just been fortunate to be able to help and work with people, and I'm grateful every day. I do joke that I started to get paid for my hobby years ago, and I just never went back to my profession. And you're right. There are a lot of coaches coaching today who every morning they wake up and they're very, very grateful for that opportunity. And it is young as well. You're right. And there's so many things that we have to learn. And I think it's interesting because there's so many areas that converge in what you do on a day-to-day basis. Everything from physiology to psychology to culture to teamwork to organizational dynamics, all of these things come together in helping. Truly, I know you're trying to help people be the best that they can be.
Now, Fergus, I don't know about you, but I get asked a lot of how I got into this, and what are the steps to do what you do? So if there's a young student out there, or somebody that's maybe in their early 20s or even younger than that wants to do what we're doing, would you have any tips and advice? Is there any particular courses they need to study? Is there how would they get to eventually do what we do? And we know that your overnight success took 25 years, right? So
Yeah, like like honestly, I didn't have a plan, and I don't have a plan. I just truly enjoy, my purpose. I love helping good people do great things. If you were to ask me what it is, and it's not sport is yes part of it, but it's helping people, do good things and follow on and impact others. And I think I was telling you, this morning, this week, I would do a lot of pro bono work and help a lot of people. I would be doing this whether there's a coronavirus or not. You enjoy helping others and helping see them do good things, and then that so many of them are going to go on and help others.
yeah,
I didn't have a plan. There are a lot of people who, study sports science or study psychology and things like that. But what I've found in more recent years are that there's a difference between having a passion for the industry or the actual action, and a passion for getting the qualification. And I think that, I think children maybe or kids today are forced at a younger and younger age to decide what they want to do. So even when I was coming through school, I didn't know what I wanted to do really. I had to make a decision early on, but I'm fortunate that I'm following my passion and my purpose, in life, which not everybody gets that chance to do. And I think my advice would be, for somebody who wants to do that, is take your time, ensure that's what you truly want to do. And then the best advice I can give anybody is find the best people who are doing it and, work with them, work under them, learn from them. I've been fortunate to have some incredible mentors, over the years, whether it was in sports science or in sport or coaches, and to get the opportunity to learn from them.
Would you say, Fergus, that you made those opportunities happen? Because I can hear right now a young listener listening to this and saying, well, they think you're lucky. They think, I'm lucky to be where we are, but we've had to knock doors, grind, phone, email again, so I just stay persistent. Was it the same journey for you?
That's a great point. Yeah, I can say, that I am lucky, but, I remember traveling in a taxi cab out to Chula Vista, San Diego, to spend a few days with Dan Path, and counting, dollars in the back of my pocket to worried that maybe I wouldn't have had enough money to get back to my hotel, which was, I don't think I slept that night. It was not the best hotel, things like that. There's journeys I've been on to go and find people and to learn from them. Getting off a airplane in Toronto airport, trying to see where Charlie Francis and his son were in the crowd, and it's not a comfortable journey. I wouldn't swap it. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, you have to make things work. You do have to be proactive. I don't think you need to be abrasive or rude to do it, but you do have to be willing to be persistent and really want to do it. Yeah, find out. I tell people, what I would do years ago is I would buy 3 Sunday newspapers, and I would read the feature articles in those to see who are the coaches of these famous athletes. There'd be an interview with somebody, and you see who's the coach and what name do they drop, and half the names you didn't know. This was before the internet. You try and find out. And I had a little black notebook, and I'd write down the name and who's this guy, and then you'd talk to people, and the questions I would always ask. Every time I would ask people, like, who's the best coach that you've been with, or who did you learn from, or I would ask, what books, or who's the best person you got the opportunity. And names then up, and you'd go, look, is there any chance you could give me a phone number, an email address? And back then, now you can find out anything about anybody, but back then, like an email address was gold, and it was like, like a famous coach would have an email like PMR786 whatever at Hotmail or Yahoo.co.uk. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't. Yeah. People didn't have websites, no. And so that's kind of how it was. And like Ashley Jones, I remember his email used to be the Iron Gollywog at hotmail.com, and he's never going to find. No. Like, this is the strength coach of the All Blacks, and he'd send an email, and guys like him, like Clive Woodward, people like that, yes, happy to meet you. What date? Or between this time and this time on this date, and you'd go and book the cheapest flight to London or whatever, and going or to New Zealand. Like, I remember going to New Zealand. Oh my Lord. And the cost of the flight and sitting in coach, and and then finding a hotel in Christchurch and going across, standing outside getting sunburned within 30 minutes in Christchurch, New Zealand, just because in time. So, like, that's the journey. That's the journey that I've been on, and I was talking with somebody recently. I have no regrets about anything, or no, if anything were to happen in the morning, there isn't a day that I haven't used or lived. And I've been fortunate to meet incredible people, have incredible stories, great friends, and very, very fortunate. And so, if there was a young kid who wanted to do that, I would just follow your passion, your purpose, live it, go meet people. I still remember as well, there was an assistant strength coach of Christchurch, Luke Thornley, who passed away, shortly afterwards. And, you remember things like that. Charlie Francis no longer around. There's a lot of Gary Speed. There was a boat, and people like that who are no longer around, and you don't know what's going to happen. You live every moment, and just keep learning, enjoy the journey.
Yeah, that's fascinating because we have similar journeys. For me as well, it was like that as well, to try and reach somebody, or you would kill to have 2 minutes with them on the phone, or to get a reply or whatever, and you'd wait for that reply. I think some people just think that, we just fell into these type of positions. But I invested, like you, my last few cents on, now back in the day, that, like you said, there wasn't internet and so on, let's just say in the early 90s. And if you had internet back then, you were well-to-do, you know what I mean? Like, it was so...
Yeah, do you remember the sound on the phone?
Yeah,
like
the modem,
the dial-up connection, the modem. That's right, and you'd be shouting at someone to get off the phone as well. You're in the middle. You're in the middle of an email and lose connection.
Well, it was so well. Back in the day, it was so expensive. It was like, you were charged. Right. You were charged by the minute. It was like an international call. So you were charged $3 for a minute. So I'd remember trying to reach somebody from my early athletic career, and my dad would be pretty much standing over my shoulder, and it would take about 4 minutes to connect. First of all, there's 4 minutes charged for, and then you'd have maybe 1 minute to speak to the guy, But it was crazy. Now it's so easy. So but I can remember. Now I could have listened to him closer, but Michael Boyle. When I was in my early career, and a big influence for me in the performance industry were Mark Verstegen and Michael Boyle. And I took a flight from here in the States to, or was it from South Africa, to Dublin, Ireland, to listen to Mike, because Mike was speaking there 7-8 years ago. I can't remember. And, it cost me a few thousand, and it cost me I stayed at not the, like you said, not the best hotel where you don't get much sleep. But I invested. Now that money could have gone to a watch, a new phone, or whatever. It went to learning. And, people might say, well, that's crazy where you go there and so on and so forth. But that's what it took, I mean, is that you have to be persistent. You just don't fall into these positions. But let's move along. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I know we're sounding like two really old men talking, but that's a great point. Like, I mean, I have a library of books, and when I say library, like I do, it's a huge library of books. And you mentioned like Mark Verstegen and Mike Boyle, and one actually really sad one that I still get choked up a little bit about was Thomas Riley at Liverpool. He called me. I don't know if I sent him a letter or an email, and he called me, and I know exactly where I was sitting. I know the chair. I was in Ireland. I was home for the weekend. And I think it was in the UK at the time. But anyway, he called me and we had this long conversation and chat. And I found out then a few weeks later he had passed away. And he had been sick for some time. But then, like, the reason that he hadn't got back to me was because he was ill. And he never let on. I didn't know. I wouldn't have been close to him. And this legend of research in Liverpool called me and gave me time to a stranger. Like, I mean, who was I? I had never studied under him anything. But those are the kind of people. And like Mark Verstegen, and I actually only met Mark a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago in Arizona. A lovely guy, absolute gentleman. And like Mike, I didn't know. I had some of his books and courses, and then he reached out to me. I burned out completely. I got a DUI, and then I get this email out of the blue from Mike Boyle, and he didn't know me. He didn't know me anything, or I had never done anything for him. But just said, look, I want you to come up to Boston, and went up and spent a few days with him. Just a really good guy, and those are the kind of people that you have in the industry, where you've got there are a lot of really, really good. Same with Louis Simmons. Louis, I didn't know, and next thing I get an email from Louis Simmons to come to Ohio. Like, I mean, it was when you stumble and you trip, there's a lot of good people, yourself included. Like, I mean, you reach out, and that's when you find the kind of that's when adversity really reveals the character of friends, and sometimes a lot of strangers in the industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's move along. Let's go into high performance sports, because obviously, looking at your resume, and for the people out there who are listening, they can find that on fergusconnolly.com. But you've worked with, I mean, some amazing teams, like you said, the Welsh team. You've worked with Liverpool, Bolton Wanderers, so on and so forth. But what does it take to stay at the top once you've gotten there in sport or in business? I mean, what commonalities do you see of these top performers?
Yeah, that's something I've spent a lot of time, particularly the last 2 years, on really identifying and working on. And it's easy. This is going to sound incorrect, but it's actually easy to get there. It's easy to be successful in the sense that, there are certain skills that you have to have, and you get very, very good at them. But to stay there, it takes something completely different. And on the professional side, you have to develop, a range of soft skills. The ability to listen, work as part of a team, be a leader, communicate well, have empathy, understand others, to sustain performance. On the personal side, like, I mean, you have to look after yourself. Like, I mean, one of the things that we do, like we spoke about, is you invest and you push yourself so hard, but sometimes that's at the expense of your own health. From time to time, that you cut hours in sleep. But then on a more global scale, you also it has to align with your values and your purpose. And those are the key things, I think, that are needed in elite organizations, whether it's, like you said, sport, military, business, to truly sustain it. And you can, I had this conversation with Gary Ridge, who CEO at, or was a CEO actually at WD-40, and I said, anybody can take your company and run it hard for 3 years and be successful. But to do what he has done and to do what organizations like that have done, where they sustain it, that takes a completely different set of skills, and that's special, and it's pretty rare.
Now, Fergus, you've obviously brought out, is it 3 books now?
I have 2 books, Game Changer, 59 Lessons, and
which I have, which is excellent, by the way. I love the format of that. It's easy to read. It's like bite size. You can read something and you can take away a piece in 5 or 6 minutes and then come back to it. So I love that book. But sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So like you mean, and I have a third one, which hopefully I'll bring out, and it's called the Happiness Handbook for High Achievers, which, in like you talk to a lot of people, and this, Allistair, and a lot of people probably in high performance probably don't admit it publicly, but at times it can get very, very difficult, and people struggle to understand why they're not happy, even though they're, successful. And, I was talking with a multiple gold medal winning Olympian recently, and they were talking about how difficult finding contentment can be, and so I really wanted to explore that and to identify and to help high achievers truly identify what happiness is about and how they find happiness in what they do, and so that's my third book. But 59 Lessons was, I wanted to write a book that just shared a lot of the stories for people in the industry, but also lessons from being around some very successful athletes and coaches.
I think that's such an important lesson, that because I always just think of it, you're not defined by what you do, you're defined by who you are, and I've had similar situations and conversations with top athletes as well, where, like you said, especially after their career, they've lost their identity. They're no longer John the rower or Tim the cyclist. They're now just Tim or John. I mean, it's they've lost that identity, and that's
that's exactly it, Alistair. And so the 3 questions that I really focus on with people are, and sometimes I not trick them, but sometimes I'll say, like, who are you? And they often will define themselves by, I'm, like you said, I'm John the rower. And then I'll say, what do you do? And they give you the same answer. And that's how I draw, bring attention to the fact that, no, what you told me originally is what you do. But who are you is a completely different thing. And you always were that person, but you happen to play this sport or, compete at this level. And then, the third question is, why are you here? Like, so what do you do? Who are you? What do you do? And why are you here? Which is that's your purpose. Like, why, it's not quite, but it's similar to the Stephen Covey question of, how do you want to be remembered?
You did a TED talk last year, which was 2019. Tell us a little bit more about that. You go into the story about sheepdogs, and I thought it was very, very interesting. Now, I've obviously seen it, but for some of the listeners that haven't, tell us a little bit more about that, Fergus.
Well, I was working at the University of Michigan, and I had been there for 2 years. I had taken on a second job. I was director of performance. I'd taken on the job director of operations, and I had 8 days vacation in 2 years. I was working, 14-hour days or more even, and 7 days a week. I found one of my jobs advertised online. I went to see the athletic director, found out, or the head coach, and find out what was going on. I couldn't get a straight answer. And then I got a text, hey, listen, can you move everything home? We'll find you a new office in a few days. So I moved everything home, waited to find out what was going on. And, 1 week went by, 2 weeks went by, and, by the time I got the third week, I was slowly cracking up. and I couldn't sleep. As I say in the TED talk, it was 4:30 in the morning, and I'd actually, believe it or not, I brought back a bottle of vodka for I never have alcohol in the house. I brought back a bottle of vodka for the athletic director. His father had passed away as a gift. And I thought, I'm going to have a Moscow Mule here and fall asleep. It's 4:30 in the morning, and after 3 Moscow Mules, I still couldn't fall asleep. And I got up the next morning. I drove to my girlfriend's house. She worked at the university as well, and it was 3 blocks away. And I crashed, and I got arrested. I got DUI, and it was a huge wake-up call for me. But after 4 weeks of trying to sit at home and figure it out for myself, and the great paradox is, I'm the person who's supposed to know about high performance. I'm the person who helps other people solve these problems. And I didn't even see it myself. I didn't see, and I wasn't able to look after myself properly when and so a few days later, I had a special forces guy that worked for, I called from a few of them, but one of them said to me, said, look, what happened? I told him what happened. He said, I just heard. And he said, so why didn't you call me? And I said, why would I call someone like you, who's had to deal with far greater things than I have had to? And he said, look, everybody needs a sheepdog at some stage. And, he and so many others, including NFL players and whatever, shared stories of when they were really struggling on their own and they had to reach out and lean on somebody else. And that was a lesson that I didn't realize. I probably was that person for a lot of others, but I didn't pick up the phone, or I didn't go talk to someone until it was too late. And it was embarrassing. It was humiliating. It was very, very difficult for me. But it was a lesson that I had to learn. I had to learn the lesson that no matter, who you are or whatever your so-called level of expertise is, nobody gets through life alone, and you need to lean on people, and particularly people like you and I, who are, I guess maybe at times looking after others and answering others' questions. Sometimes you just forget about yourself, and it's like, I was doing some work with special forces groups after that, and I remember sitting on the plane flying back from one of them, and the air stewardess was, reading out the emergency instructions. In the case of emergency, face masks will fall from the ceiling. Put on your own face mask before you put on that of anybody else. And that's when it hit me. I was not looking after myself in a way that I should have. And I needed to learn that lesson.
I appreciate you being so honest, Fergus, and thanks for sharing that too, man. Any of you guys that haven't checked out Fergus's TED Talk, check it out. Just obviously, they can find it by putting in Fergus Connolly, right? Fergus Connolly TED Talk.
Yeah, it's on my website. I put it on my website because the other thing too, like what happened, Allistair, was a lot of people, like I said, very, very successful people called me afterwards and shared stories of, look, you don't know this about me, or I haven't told you this, or nobody knows this. And they all shared stories about struggles, failures, screw-ups that they had. And mine was, I wanted to do the TED Talk to, show that, look, no matter what happens, we all will screw up from time to time, and we all make mistakes, and you have to face it. Like, you have to run to the gunfire. And I had to sit down and look at myself and go, why did you let this happen? And it's nobody's fault. It's my fault. I'm responsible, and I'm not a victim. You face it, you own up to it, you accept the consequences, and you learn from it. Because if you don't, and if you run from it, then you're doomed to repeat it. And it was important for me to realize that, I'm not perfect. You need to learn from your mistakes. And it was particularly tough for me because, like I said, I was supposed to be the expert in high performance, and yet I screwed up. And the irony is, or another irony, there's lots of them, but the irony is that I had put programs in place for a lot of teams where we had players who were struggling with these things. In Game Changer, I have a whole section on it, on how to spot it in others and how to help others and how to, bulletproof others. And yet, I had nobody either looking out for me, or I wasn't leaning on anyone when I should have been myself.
No, good point. Good point. I mean, like you said, we're as coaches and consultants, you're looking out for others, but the first thing is you need to take care of yourself. So good points. Let's move on to a current situation now. We're in the beginning of April 2020, and it's an understatement to say it's been a very interesting, challenging, and unexpected beginning to our year, because the coronavirus, which is a pandemic and it's affecting the whole world, but it's especially affecting a lot of industries, Fergus. Do you see any positives coming out of this? Because we know what the negatives are. There's people that are losing their jobs daily. We see the death count, I think, is up to, I don't know, was it last 54,000 or something? Maybe I'm way off, but it's 900 people are dying a day from this in Italy and Spain. It's horrific what's going on, but it's obviously had a massive, massive impact on the economy. We're going to be going into a recession. Do you see any positives coming out of this, especially when it comes to our industry?
There always have to be positives. It's hard to say that when people are dying, and I think there are a few things. I think, first of all, I think it's brought awareness to what's truly important, and your friends, your family, or the people who are closest to you, they're the most critical. I think it really draws attention to the importance of health and the health service. I think one of the other, lessons that I think that you're starting to see now is a greater awareness of civic duty. I stay at home. I might go to the store once every 3 days but I don't go out. No, others are not doing that because that's your civic duty. That's the right thing to do. And for, it's rare that something like this would happen where you would think like that. We have grown, I think, as a whole, very, perhaps selfish from time to time, and we really only concern ourselves with ourselves. And I think this is, it's drawn attention to our role and our influence and how we can positively influence and help others. It's a global tragedy, but I think that we are now seeing how we can truly help others by our actions and how we can influence others. And I think one of the things that just in conversation, there are a lot of people are getting time now to reflect on themselves and to improve themselves right now that maybe they wouldn't normally get.
Which can be a very, very tough place to go, to finally have to slow down and confront your demons, so to say. I think that's why a lot of people are in the rat races, because they don't really want to stop and look inwards. I mean, I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things that come out of this. I think there's going to be a lot of positives, as you mentioned there. There always is positives that come from a negative situation. But Fergus, is there any advice you'd give? I mean, we have a lot of coaches, trainers. We have different industries. But is there any advice you'd give to them right now, especially ones that are homebound? They probably might not be working for another at least 2-3 months. How do you keep yourself sane, or how do you stay productive during such a time?
Well, I had 4 weeks of isolation and not knowing and uncertainty, and I screwed it up the first time by not talking to somebody and not sharing how I felt and not leaning on someone. And after that, I had months on my own, because what I had to go through afterwards was infinitely more difficult for me. And I learned, that I had to organize myself. I had to be disciplined about, deciding this is what I'm going to do today and this is the work that I'm going to get done. But afterwards I'd learned that, I had to build a community of sheepdogs that I would pick up the phone and speak to. And when they would ask me how I feel, I was more authentic. Like I said in the TED talk, if I'm having a bad day and somebody asks me how I feel, I don't lie or fib. I tell them, yeah, today's a tough day. Yesterday was a good day, or whatever. And I think that's particularly important, that you, are authentic and you recognize you are going to have bad days. But I think the most important thing for people right now is to identify small goals and small tasks and tick them off and see this as opportunity, because you've got a choice. When things get difficult, the only thing that you truly control is how you react to things. And that's the most important lesson that I learned over, the last 2 years was you control how you react to things. Yes, you're going to have sad days, you're going to have tough days, but, you do control, how you perceive things and how you present them to yourself or allow them to be presented. And you have to identify tasks, things that you want to get done, projects that you want to get done, and you work on those. But I think one of the things that a lot of people similar to you and I would struggle with is actually taking time off. That was the one thing I struggled with. And so now I'm a lot better at taking whole days off. Before, I would never do that. I would work late into the night. I used to have written on my wall 16, 2, and 6, which was 16 hours of work I could get done a day, 6 hours sleep, and 2 hours for driving, eating, and everything else. That was, but that, you cannot sustain that. Mm-hmm. And so I've got so much better at, and that's one of the things I learned I had to work on was taking time off, taking time to myself, and the value of it. So I think for people, it's identify the tasks you want to get done, but also clearly identify what work what time you're going to take off from work, when you're going to stop, and be really dedicated about taking time off. I think that's very, very important.
Some good points there. Fergus, what or who inspires you?
I think my parents, first and foremost, have been a huge inspiration to me. They are, they are my role models. But apart from that, there's some people like Dan Taff, again, another guy who I knew, but who called me out of the blue, when I tripped and stumbled. Mike Boyle, people like that who go out of their way to check in on younger people in the industry, and it's as a result of those people that I'll check in on people, because that's what they did. That they led by example, and yeah, I think for me, my purpose is trying to help good people do great things and share examples and knowledge that I've been fortunate to learn from great coaches. So there's so many of them, that I've picked up bits and pieces from.
Yeah, you're just mentioning names there where, I haven't had the privilege to meet Dan. I've heard so much about him, but as we just spoke about Mark Verstegen there, I actually only met Mark probably 4 or 5 years ago. It was at a Perform Better summit in Orlando, Florida, and it was Anthony Reyna who introduced me to Mike, and just what a humble guy, man. I was so nervous to meet him because I had years and years of buying some of his material, and before webinars and all these things, we would you'd buy a CD, you'd order a CD and you'd wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get it in the mail.
Yes.
And that's where I learned about Mike, and so on. I use so much of his work in my work, and I always say, even to younger students and athletes today, is don't get distracted by all this noise on social media, and a lot of the people that are selling these programs are just great marketers, and they've trained nobody. I mean, there's no, you look at, okay, Mike would say it as well. Mike would say, before you go and buy this fancy training online program, see who the trainer is and who they've worked with. What's their track record?
Yeah, and I don't know if it was Mark and Mike. Somebody said once, I held a stopwatch for Usain Bolt once and at practice, but that doesn't mean I trained him. Just because you because you were there doesn't mean that just because you were there doesn't mean that you train them, and that's why, I was part of the backroom team with Gary Speed and Lee Halfpenny, Lee Byrne, Colin Kaepernick. How much of an impact or influence did I have? You'd like to think that you helped in some small way, but I didn't make these people. Frank Gore, lovely guy, but I didn't make these people. You, at best, in many cases, you're just trying to ensure that you don't, screw them up, and you're just trying to help them. So that's on one end of the scale, and there's lots of people, and then the other thing too. I think the great coaches are the ones who are encouraging. Dan is one of the most encouraging and positive coaches I've been around, and he recognizes people who are really trying to do the right thing and who are trying to find solutions, and none of us have all of the answers. We're trying to help it and trying to help the athlete. We're trying to find the best way, and if you don't have the answer, you either find it or you find somebody else who can help them. And that's what this is all about, really.
Yeah, it all comes down to ego, isn't it? I mean, when no, we need another podcast for that, and we'd need probably another 4 hours for that one. But especially in the industry, there's just so many out there that are, I don't want to listen. Everybody's trying. I get it, but again, getting back to who have you trained, and even if you haven't, just be a nice person. And Dan comes across that on social media. He's not attacking everybody under the sun like we've seen some people in our industry. Everybody's trying. Everybody's trying to be. But my father always used to say to me, if you haven't got something positive to say, don't say it. No, you're just letting yourself down. And it's the other thing too. I often tell this story about, let's say you get a group of people in a room, and they can be some of the most successful people that you can think of. So maybe it's Bill Gates and Oprah and The Rock and Kevin Hart, and you're on Oprah's yacht, and you have dinner together, and everybody's telling stories about what they've done and what they're doing, and maybe I don't know, maybe they're telling stories about the latest yacht or house they bought and the work they're doing. And then at the end of dinner, the waiter comes along, but the waiter, there's no check. Oprah's got that, but there's no check. The waiter comes and hands everybody a blank piece of paper, and he asks everybody to write down the greatest worry, stress, or burden that they have to carry with them each day, or on that particular day. And then he tells everybody, he clears the table, he tells everybody, crumple up the piece of paper, and everybody throw their piece of crumpled up ball of paper into the middle of the table. Now here's the deal. You can swap your life, wealth and health with anybody at the table. Anybody, The Rock, Oprah, it doesn't matter. But you have to pick up their piece of paper and take their burden or their stress as well. I guarantee you, Alistair, when you would see the burdens, the stresses, the problems that other people have to deal with, you'd want your own piece of paper and your own situation back. In other words, you don't know what other people have to deal with behind, in their own personal life. So I'm slow to criticize other people because you just don't know what's going on. And I learned that, headlines are written about you and whatever, and people just don't know what has gone on before that. And it gives you a completely different perspective. So,
yeah, your father's quote. My father used to say the same thing. You don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. And
It must be an Irish thing.
yeah, it must be an Irish thing. Just a better sense of awareness. But yeah, it's yeah, just yeah, everybody's trying to do their best, and yeah, it's too easy sometimes to throw stones. And some of those people that I know you're talking about, but some of those people, they throwing stones. Yeah, they got yeah, they got their own issues to deal with.
Yeah, especially on social media. I mean, putting stuff out there,
Oh,
it just goes out to the world. And you know, there was one particular person that we were talking about, obviously off air, and it's not talking about it, but just the incredibly, knowledgeable and experienced, but just maybe just someone that hasn't adapted well, and so on and so forth. And it's such a pity because, at the end of the day, Fergus, you're going to be judged for who you were.
well, look, if and this is something I think that younger athletes are probably more aware of, but and I think it's an issue. I think it's certainly an issue nowadays. If you are relying on the opinion of the likes and the retweets from strangers for your happiness, you got bigger issues. And that's the difference between an image and an identity. Your image is what you put out there, and whatever that doesn't. You can create any image you want. Like, I mean, it used to be a joke. Everybody benches 500 pounds on the internet, but like who you are, like that's.
Oh, it's not true, Fergus. It's not true that everyone benches 500.
Exactly. Like, I mean, so whatever. Like, for me, it's that's the difference between image and identity. Who are you, and who are you really? And that's something that you see a lot with it can be anybody. Like, I mean, elite athletes as well, who not necessarily related to that instance, but like, yeah, they're the ones who are most who I love being around are people like Mike and Dan and people like that who are just comfortable in who they are. And that's just be happy with who you are and focus on that before you go knocking others.
No, super. Now, Fergus, I know you're busy, and I respect your time as well. So just a few more questions before we shut shop. If you were to have lunch with 3 people, who would they be and why? They can be alive. They can be alive, or they can be or dead.
Well, one of the authors I have a crush on her. She's amazing. Is Annie Jacobson, and she's written quite a few books. She wrote about I think Operation Paperclip was the last one. Oh, sorry, it wasn't actually. That was the one before that. But she's just an amazing writer, nonfiction writer. Da Vinci, has always fascinated me just as a mind, as a brain, and Tesla. So those would be 3
Elon Musk.
people. Not that Tesla, Nikola Tesla. Elon Musk. Maybe I'll go again. Just again, like, yeah, he's a fascinating guy. But no, Nikola Tesla, Leonardo da Vinci, and Annie Jacobson is. Annie Jacobson is something I find fascinating. Just as a writer, she just the level of detail and work. Like, I really respect people who are just passionate about what they do and who follow that purpose and passion, and are not confined by silos, and who just love exploring and trying to find, who are truth seekers. And that's I think that's just a common thing. People who are just really, really interested in finding solutions to things, and they're not purposely disruptive, but produce really disruptive solutions. And perhaps Elon Musk fits into that as well.
Is there any phrase that you live by, or is there any particular quote that's stands out for you? Anything in particular?
Not particularly. Like, one of the things I learned really early on was be comfortable being uncomfortable. I think a lot of pain and a a lot of pain and discomfort comes from expecting things to be regular, linear, and predictable. A life isn't like that, and you have to be prepared to, things are going to be disruptive. I think probably the phrase I'm most known for now is, even sheepdogs need a sheepdog, which is probably not a bad one, but I think I've always been, prepared to be somewhat uncomfortable because that's the way life is.
Excellent. Last question, and you already mentioned some of the books by what was her name? Amy
Jacobson.
Amy Jacobson. Any other books you'd recommend to our listeners?
I gotta get your. I have to get your latest one.
Well, so do I.
That's on my.
Well, so do I, because I had to order it off Amazon myself because of the coronavirus and everything. The publishers and printers are down, so I had to order my book offline. So I can't even give you one. I'm sorry, Fergus.
No, I read absolutely anything. The latest book actually that I have on my Kindle, I meant to start it the other day. It's called The Calling by Ra Goddess, and it's about finding purpose, because that's something that I've written about myself and particularly interested in now. I find it's more and more of interest and of importance to people today.
How would you actually, Fergus? How would you? That's a great question. How would you describe purpose? Because there's so many different interpretations of purpose.
Yeah, I sum it up the question like, why are you here? Like, why are you here? What is your, like, why? Like, what is your, people, I don't like the term, what is your why? It's just a little bit too simplistic, but like, why are you here? And the other phrase I don't particularly like is when people say, how do you want to be remembered? Because to me, that's...
Well, that was my next question, Fergus.
I was going to say, I was going to say, I can get hit by a bus tomorrow. Nobody's going to care. Like, nobody's going to care. Like, it's kind of so the way that I, and the reason is that I rephrase it like, what are you going to do today? Not how are you going to be remembered. And people are worried about, like, what are you going to do today that's going to make somebody better? And I've got later on this week I'll get I think 2 or 3 calls with other teams or groups. Like, there's a university that I offered to do some just do a call with their kids, just because the coaches can't get to them and they're just organizing. So things like that. Like, what are you going to do today or tomorrow or this week just to leave the world a slightly better place? Or like, what are you going to do today that's not for you? And I think that comes down to your why are you here? And a lot of it is you do it not with the expectation of getting anything back, but I love the concept of the movie Pay It Forward. There are things like guys like Dan Path and others. I mentioned Dan so many times now, but people like that, they remind you to do things for others, and so Gary Ridge, the same thing, CEO WD-40, called me, helped me, has always been good to me. And, there's a guy, a colleague of ours in the industry who, again, he stumbled, tripped, and, I reached out to him. I knew him not particularly well, but I reached out to him because of all these other people who helped me. And, we chatted regularly as he got through what he was going through. And, that's why you do those things, because others have helped you and passed it on.
You're a good man, Fergus. You're a good man. Pass on what.
No. I think that's important.
Of course.
I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have done. Christ, I'm no saint. But it's not that. It's just people. You wouldn't be. I wouldn't be here because people gave up time or answered an email. Like, there's a guy called Glenn Stewart who sent me a book from Australia almost 30 years ago, and he wouldn't even remember me. But there's things like that. So some kid who who's going to ask you for a copy of your book or whatever, you'll help him out and things like that. And you're not going to look for anything back, but you know that he's going to do it to somebody else down the line as well.
Absolutely, pass it on. Excellent, Fergus. It's been an absolute pleasure for us to finally get this done. I know that the listeners are really going to enjoy this one. For anyone that wants to reach out to you or follow you on any social media platforms, where would that be?
Yeah, my website or just Twitter is probably the one that I'm most active on. Fergus_Connolly. Yeah, thank you very much, Allistair, for having me. Really enjoyed it, and like you said, great to finally do this.
Absolute pleasure. And all your books are available on Amazon. That's the best platform for your books.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Amazon's for everything at the minute. What a phenomenon! But yeah,
yeah, exactly. All right, super.
Stay safe, Allistair, in these times, and best wishes to all your listeners.
Super. Thanks so much for your time, Fergus. Cheers.
Thank you, Allistair.
So there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed that one with Fergus Connolly. Remember, this podcast is available on iTunes and on YouTube. Connect with me on social media on Twitter @Allistair McCaw, on Facebook, Allistair McCaw page, and on Instagram, Be Champion Minded. Also, all books available on Amazon. So guys, remember, you were made for greatness. Now go do the work. Stay champion minded.